So here we are back for another episode of the Beyond the Box podcast. And I am extremely excited to have our guest joining us today. I'm pleased to welcome you, Sarah Romanuck, who is the Director of Technology and Innovation with the Royal Bank of Canada, RBC, as those of us in Canada know it. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you as well. RBC has been such a great partner as we've stood up the Reach Canada program already. And you in particular have, really been a champion of technology and innovation largely, and we're going to get into your story in a little bit. But I've really appreciated the support that you've given us and the guidance and the direction just on the landscape. And so, we feel extremely privileged to have you joining us on the Beyond the Box podcast today and sharing some of your insights on technology and innovation across Canada with our audience. So looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, me too. And I would say likewise, you guys have been amazing partners and so great to work with. And I think that you're doing really, really great things in the prop tech space. So it's been our absolute pleasure to connect with you on a regular basis.
Amazing. And I know we're going to get into a few little teasers, but I can't wait to see how we can continue to work together, but in even more interesting and innovative ways. So with that, I'd love to just dive in and have you share with us a little bit of, your origin story, your experience in the landscape, and really what got you as passionate as you are about technology in the banking sector, which don't always seem like they're, they're used in the same sentence. But please share with us your background, your story.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I'll try to keep it as short as I can. My background, I've been a commercial banker for years. Prior to joining RBC, which was 3 years ago, I'd actually moved to Calgary with another bank, and I was doing commercial banking. So everything from relationship management, business development, a lot on the credit underwriting side. And when I moved to Calgary, it was 2014. And for those listeners who wouldn't be familiar, Calgary is in Alberta, which is very, very focused on the energy sector. And 2014 was a great year until the very end of 2014. And ever since then, the province has been going through a difficult time with sort of the suppression of oil and gas prices and that kind of a thing. So about 3 years ago, I started thinking, what type of industry can I get involved with that excites me and is new and I can really add some value and is on its way up. And at the time in Alberta, there was a small but mighty team of people pushing for the tech sector to really become the next big thing. And they've succeeded since then. And so I took that opportunity with RBC and I joined 3 years ago as a senior commercial account manager on the tech side. So I worked with, scaling tech companies across Alberta. And what I found that I fell in love with the sector. So conceptually, I loved it for the reasons that I talked about. But what made me really fall in love with it was two things. So one, there were the community players. There are so many salt of the earth people that are so talented, down to earth, intelligent, and giving with their time that are really pushing for the tech sector. And they were amazing in helping me get up the learning curve quickly. And then obviously it goes without saying the entrepreneurs, right? So the entrepreneurs of tech companies are like people I've just never met before. Like they're visionary, they're extremely driven. They're dreamers who are actually willing to take the advice and put in the action to make those dreams become a reality. And I could go on, but that's what made me fall in love with it. And then fast forward to today, I still reside in Calgary, but I'll be making a move out to Ontario soon because I've taken on a role leading a team of technology and innovation banking advisors out in Ontario, so Southwest Ontario and Toronto.
Super exciting, super exciting. And, just to sort of thread the needle, Reach Canada Director Mike McCara resides in Calgary, which is how the two of you met. And so I've had, through his lens, the opportunity to sort of see that burgeoning tech sector in Calgary. And, even as you're describing it, I was getting goosebumps a little bit because it's exactly what my very limited experience has demonstrated to me, is just how tightly knit that sector is, how closely connected everyone is, and really how supportive it is. And I think, again, it's a lot of the things that you have articulated in terms of what gets you excited about working with entrepreneurs and technology companies, I can absolutely relate with. It's exactly the reason why I love doing what we do. And it's the reason why we like to partner with, entities like like RBC, who has a really finite or really fine lens on supporting those sectors in terms of even adjusting how they do business in a normal way. So, I'd love to hear sort of that segue piece, Sarah, into what the current technology and banking landscape looks like across Canada, frankly. And I think you've articulated that you've had experience with other institutions, but I'd love sort of a generalist view, and then maybe some of your thoughts on where the challenges are, where some opportunities really lie in terms of that ancillary support for technology through, in particular, the banking sector.
Yeah, sure. That's a good question and a big one because it's evolving so fast that I think a lot of people actually have a hard time keeping up with it. So I'm happy to give you a snapshot on what it looks like today and where I think it might go. So I will say, like, if you looked at 5 years ago, there really wasn't a lot going on in terms of financing in the tech space, certainly not from the big banks as aggressively as it is today. And literally every quarter, there's something new out there. So, I mean, it depends on what the stage of the life cycle the companies that are listening are in. So I actually don't subscribe to the view that there's a lack of capital for the space. I think it's more about navigating where you're at in your life cycle. So, for the really early stage companies, there's some really great grant programs, kind of a hot topic because some opinions will say some of those grants take so long to get that I should really just be focusing on customers. And in some cases, that's true. Revenue is the cheapest form of capital, so time well spent. But there are some really good programs that companies of all sizes should be exploring. So there's, IRAP. So for our non-Canadian listeners, Industry Research Assistance Program. Western Economic Development is doing some really excellent work in that space in Western Canada. And then, of course, on a national scale, we see the shreds of scientific research and experimental development credits getting used a lot. And it's a really excellent program. And then in those early days, there's some really active groups out there, right? Like there's angel groups spanning the country. So I know Valhalla Angels that looks after Western Canada well. They do a great job. There's Equation Angels, who I've recently acquainted myself with in Southwest Ontario. Like both of those groups literally curate investment opportunities for high net worth investors, which is a win-win for all, in my opinion. And then, I would say most of the big 6 banks in Canada. So again, for American listeners, the banking sector in Canada is very different. It's really dominated by a small number of big players. They're at varying stages right now. So there are still some banks that are having trouble wrapping their head around, how do I lend to a company burning cash and they don't have any hard assets? And then there's other groups that are sort of doubling down on the space. And I can only speak on our behalf, but we're definitely doubling down. We're doing a ton of work in that space and even brought on a really solid leadership team. It's actually led by Sid Peckett. He was a managing partner over at Rbc Ventures for a number of years. We brought over Tony Barquette from Silicon Valley Bank. He was there for like 21 years. So we're kind of doubling down on helping that sector. And then the last thing I would say is, depending on what stage of the cycle the company's in, are they early, just commercialized, have they raised venture capital? If you're an early stage company, yeah, you can get basic banking. But you can also get advice and connections and pitch coaching if you just know who to talk to. Mm-hmm. And then for VC-backed companies, that's a hot space right now. There's so many credit options for them. There's SaaS operating lines, which are effectively an interest-only vehicle at senior bank prices so that they can invest in top-line growth. There's venture debt. There's all sorts of players. So I guess without going on forever, because this is a big topic, my suggestion would be go talk to your banker. And if it's not a tech banker, ask them who the tech banker is, and then have that person navigate, because we will know in real time what's going on.
Awesome. And so you answered the question that was on the tip of my tongue is, when it's, go talk to somebody or find your way into the ecosystem. Who's the person within these institutions that you typically look for? And, I'm just thinking about my experience. I don't live in a large community. And so I'm imagining if I walk into one of my banks and, ask for that tech person, if they'll even know. But what I'm hearing is most of these institutions will have a technology banking focus somewhere, whatever that looks like. And so asking to be referred into that department is kind of the best bet. And then, they'll be able to get some guidance from there.
Yeah, like yes and no. I won't call out particular brand names because I don't think that's really fair. But I will say that there's two of the big banks that, including us in Canada, Canadian banks, that have purified tech groups that are literally end-to-end tech specialists. So there's two that are very strong. There's a few others that kind of touch and go. So you might have a relationship manager who works with all companies and they leverage a specialist to get a deal done. But in any case, I would say go in there and say, especially if you're in a branch, if you're banking at a branch, it means that that advisor probably has like 300 clients in a variety of different segments. Like, it's not their function to be a specialist. But if you can say, look, is there a commercial banker I could talk to, or do you have a technology team? They'll be able to direct you.
Amazing. I just want to double back a little bit, Sarah, on, you were mentioning a number of the grants and the organizations that had available funding. To your knowledge, is there a resource anywhere that entrepreneurs, in particular in Canada, or entrepreneurs that that are thinking about potentially entering Canada, can access to discover what's available and what might be available to them? Or is that something that they should be seeking from their specialist when they're connected?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are building a really good business off of that alone, because that's another segment so there's a few independent consultants that I could recommend offline in Alberta, but then there's also, a lot of the accounting firms, like I think about, for example, RSM comes to mind quickly. They've got a really great team that helps with all of that stuff. So I've referred some business there. So I would recommend that an accounting firm would actually be the best place to go to start that conversation.
That's great. That's great. And I don't mind shamelessly plugging. I'm glad you mentioned them. I don't mind shamelessly plugging RSM. We have a great partnership with them as well. And so really happy to connect anybody that's listening that might want to learn more or have a connection either to Sarah or to anybody else. You just need to reach out to Reach Canada and we'll get you connected there. Awesome. So I wanted to move on a little bit and you've done a great job of kind of articulating the direction that banks are moving. But, I think there's still a little bit, at least in our experience, there's a little bit of this antiquated view on what banks can provide for a company. So, I literally need to, I'm an entrepreneur. I have a great idea. I'm, kicking off my company. I now have payroll and I, need an operating line of credit, or I need somewhere to park my cash because I'm generating a bit of revenue. And so my only function of going to the bank is really to open an account and make certain that I have an ability to, flow the cash. Talk to me a little bit about what banks are, and maybe even in particular RBC, what you're doing to shift away from that antiquated view and the plethora of other resources that you have to offer tech startups.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually. And I would say that just through conversation, when I speak to tech companies, especially in their early days, they do think, oh my gosh, a bank is a place that I open up a bank account and I can't get credit, so I'm not going to ask, and equity is my only option, and I don't have a contact person, and that's just the way it is. And then the other half are the ones that we've either worked with or spoken to. So I've got to get the first half converted. So so I guess there's a couple of ways that you can look at this. So first of all, when you're talking to a bank, we can look at how are they going to service the company directly, so through banking and other, and I'll get into that. And then the other thing, though, I would encourage companies on the podcast or listening in to think about is what else? Like, how can you go beyond a bank account? Because there's a lot more than that. So first, I would say if you're thinking of your banker as just somebody you can get debt from or open an account with, then you need a new banker. just transparently, it's time to start talking to other people. Like in my mind, a good banker should really be more of a financial partner. So yeah, they can meet your banking needs. They can help you navigate the financial landscape. But that's pretty 101 to me. But they should also let you leverage their networks. They should be able to make connections to angels, VCs, suggest accelerators that are a great fit for your company, such as Reach if you're a prop tech, and even introduce you to potential clients. Like, that's out there. So it comes down to navigating to the right person, right? So The other thing I would say too, this is sort of a logistical, like mechanical comment, but a lot of banks define a client who would be managed by a commercial banker, and commercial bankers are the folks that would have deeper industry expertise, fewer clients, sort of more complex needs for those clients. A lot of banks will define a commercial banking client by the amount of debt they have. So they might say, you've got $2 million in debt, then you're a commercial bank. And so what ends up happening is a bunch of really amazing technology companies, they don't need debt. Maybe they prefer to raise venture capital or whatever. And they're managed by a small business banker who, again, talented individuals, the structure of their role is not to have deep industry expertise, and they've got like 1 million clients to look after. So that's something to think about. It's not how we look at it. We look at complexity, full stop, and matching the right talent with actual needs. So that's how we look at it. Now, you know, the other way that I was referring to, so beyond talking to your advisor and what they can offer, which would be well beyond banking, if you're in front of the right person, is think about if there's a potential fit somewhere else in the organization that you should be talking to from a different lens. So I'll give you an example. So we have a group called Rbc Ventures. A lot of people think that's just direct equity investments. It's not. It's actually a group that looks to drive business back to our core business by building, buying, investing, or partnering with companies that offer solutions beyond banking. So that was a mouthful. So I'll give you a couple examples. I feel like that would be helpful. So right now we're really interested in consumer prop tech, for example. And so what we'll do in that segment is we'll actually look if there's already companies that we can partner with that have great solutions that are aligned with our strategy, an amazing team, and a good product. And so 2 recent examples of that would be with MoveSnap and SmartReno. So both of these companies we've acquired. They were both Series A or seed stage companies when everything got started. And you're going, like, for those of you who know what they do, and I'm going to tell you what they do in a moment, you're going to think, like, why is RBC playing in that space? So MoveSnap, they deliver a streamlined moving process for clients, and then they drive business to the real estate agents. And you might go, like, why is RBC playing in that space? Well, at the end of that is a customer who probably needs to mortgage a property, which drives business back to our mortgage business. And then in the case of SmartReno, that's a really interesting one. So they find contractors for if somebody wants to do renovations. Why would RBC be there? Well, they're probably going to finance those renovations, and that person probably owns their home. So it almost passes like a high-level Smith test on whether or not they've got some sort of credit rating to qualify. Right. So in a long example-filled way, I would encourage people to think about, you know, what are the strategic goals of the bank as a whole, and who else can you be talking to via your advisor?
Amazing. And, you know, not long-winded at all. I think really well demonstrated in terms of what that entire spectrum looks like, Sarah. And I really appreciate you laying that out, because again, I think it's a misnomer of, you know, the general population, but, you know, in particular, once we get into the tech sector, that banks, accountants, legal, all play these very succinct roles in the life cycle of a business. And the reality is they become kind of your board of advisors in a way, if you find the right people and you're connected in the right way, and that they should all be working synergistically. And that's really what we have, you know, not only discovered, but are really encouraging our companies to think about is, you know, how are you surrounding yourselves with the professionals that you need that are in alignment with your objectives and what you're trying to accomplish? And are you working with the team that's, you know, where your solution is aligned with their objectives as well? And so I love that you've laid that out, because it clearly demonstrates that, you know, at least RBC absolutely has that longer term vision, that longer view of how do we work within the entire ecosystem. And, you know, I think there's, you know, the other piece of it is, it's okay if you don't take that ride for the full life cycle. It's okay if you start your ride with the bank and get some of that advisory service, et cetera. And at some point you might jump onto, you know, the venture train, or you might jump onto, you know, another sort of vehicle that takes you that next step. But it's good to know that at least out the gate, you have, you know, sort of this board of advisors that's naturally built into the ecosystem on your side. So thank you for laying that out. Really appreciate it. So before we wrap up here, you have given us so much gold in this conversation, so many great tips in terms of, you know, what an entrepreneur can look for, what entrepreneurs can look for, services obviously that your bank, your institution offers. But, you know, if you could just sort of package that up neatly with a little bow, what would be like, I don't know, the 5 to 10, 7 to 10, you know, hot tips that you would leave an entrepreneur with in terms of how to engage in a really productive way with the banking sector?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Okay, you know what? I think I would preface this list by saying that these are things that you should be thinking about for the health of your business, not just for talking to your bank. And it should be not just for your investors, but it should actually be for the viability of your business.
Love it.
So here's what I can think of. So first, think objectively about the strengths and the weaknesses of your company. Pretty one-on-one stuff, but come prepared to talk about, do you have a competitive moat? Do you have customers, a growth strategy, commercial traction? Do you have a vision and a plan for the next couple of years? What does your team look like? And on a quick tangent, I would say, please never come to literally an investor or a banker or anyone really and say you don't have competition. That's a first red flag that there might not be self-awareness in your business model. And you got to think a little bit harder about that, even if it is an incumbent. The second thing I would say is know your numbers and come prepared to speak to that. So that's a boring banker answer, but the truth is, like, everybody's going to look at your financial statements if you're looking for capital. Talk to them, right? What's the story? Did you land a huge deal with a really great client? Come tell us about that. Did you lose money last year? So that might be okay if you were investing in your growth, or maybe you had a one-time restructure expense as a result of COVID, which a lot of people did. And that's really different than if the company just has never gained traction and customers don't want your product, right? So come tell us about that. The third thing I would say is consider getting a fractional CFO if you're not big enough for a full-time one. Seriously, cash is king. You need to know your cash burn. You got to figure out when you're going to run out of money, and you have to have a plan way before that.
Good advice.
You know, like there's so many great fractional CFO companies out there, and I'm just going to throw a few out there, and it's not a plug. It's because they've done good work for my clients in the past. But, you know, there's Positive Ventures Group I can think of in Ottawa. There's the CFO Center across the country. And then the last one would be Red to Black, who looks after the Alberta tech market. And they're amazing. And it doesn't have to break the bank, so to speak, to get sophisticated help part-time. So that'd be my third one. And then, you know, I think I can get to 8 as I start getting through here. Awesome. So for the mental preparation of you and our audience, I think I'm at 3. Okay, I think I'm going to get to 8. My fourth point would be, don't forget about the risk and reward curve. It's business 101. Okay, so if you don't know where your business is at from a risk perspective, find an advisor who can guide you. I'm happy to do that. My team's happy to do that. But so you can set your expectations, right? Like if you come to a senior bank who's going to lend you debt at like prime plus 2%, they're probably not going to do it when there's still a ton to be proven out in the business, because it just doesn't make sense as a business model. But an angel might, because it's equity and they want a piece of that, and they're going to really be able to roll up their sleeves to help you drive. So educate yourself on that. And if you don't know, ask. The fifth thing I would say is, if you're speaking to your business banker, this is sort of a weird one, but I think it's a good one. Take them up on the offer to meet a personal or a private banker too. And I say that because I've met so many tech founders that they literally don't think a private banker wants to talk to them, or a wealth manager, because all their money is in the business. But the reality is they need the most help out of anybody. And they shouldn't wait till a liquidity event, because they're going to get just destroyed on taxes and other things. So if they offer, take that offer and run. It doesn't cost anything, and it's amazing advice and you should think about yourself too. My sixth one, and this kind of circles back to what we talked about earlier, so I'll keep it quick. If you're a well-established company with a good track record of growth, don't be afraid to ask your banker, what else can you offer me beyond the basics? A great financial planner that knows the industry, they can provide you with so many other things, right? Like a good tech banker is going to come to you and say, I'll give you all the, like, you know, capital, banking, foreign exchange, whatever, like that's table stakes. Do you want an intro to this investor? I think this person would be a great client for you. I'll connect you, or maybe even your next executive hire. So think about that and ask a question. That's all good. You can do that. You know, and then the seventh thing I can think of is your bank a potential partner or a client? So it kind of reiterates from before, but if banks are a target client segment for you, ask your advisor to provide an intro to the right person. And when you talk to that person, if you land the business, then that's amazing. You just scored a huge enterprise client. And if the answer is not right now, or it doesn't fit with our strategy, at the minimum, you're walking away with intel on strategy and feedback that you can build into future pitches with other enterprise clients. So think about that. And then the very last thing,
we come up against that one a lot.
Do you? Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's you know, I'd love to have a bank as my major client. Okay, what do you understand about the bank? Have you dived into their strategy? Do you understand how your solution fits with their strategy? And so even when we get those boxes checked, it's like, well, it's not right now. Okay, well, what did you learn? How do you build that back into your pitch, right? And so I think, you know, and that's not just banks, that's for any large enterprise deal, right? It's, you know, I'm an enterprise solution. I want to get into these conversations. I need intros to these people. And that same conversation applies to every one of those, in every one of those scenarios, is understand your client base, right? It comes back to that, understand your client base. And I think ask the questions. That's one thing that I would encourage, that I've seen really great founders do really, really well, is they just ask a lot of questions and they learn, and then they build what they hear into their sales pitch. It's not difficult. I think it just requires a little bit of thinking.
Yeah, I think that's amazing advice. No wonder everybody wants to go through your accelerator program. Like, at the end of the day, if you feel like you're selling something, you know what I mean? If you're doing sales right, you're not selling anything at all.
Absolutely.
What you're doing is understanding and problem solving. Like, that's exactly what you should be doing. So that's amazing advice.
Exactly. So one more. I think you have one more or two more.
I have one more.
One more?
No, I have one more. And my last one sort of piggybacks on the last one in a bit of a smaller way, and that's find other ways to partner, in the sense of, you know, you've now got a trusted relationship with your banker. They're both interested in getting Canadian tech companies on an international stage. So what else? Like, can you do a joint event with them? Can they maybe sponsor you to join an accelerator program they're involved with? And then also, like, can they profile your wins to their network?
Right.
You know, if you've got a good banker, they care a lot about you and they want to help you because they're excited to be part of the journey. So give them the opportunity.
Totally. That's such great advice. I think we often forget that, you know, I don't care what the institution is, whether it's a bank or a law firm or a big consulting firm, they're made up of people, you know, and I think people genuinely want to champion people. And we often forget that, right? You know, like, oh, RBC is never going to support me. Well, you know, Sarah might, right? And Sarah is really well established in the RBC ecosystem. And so therefore, you know, and if you have a great relationship, you know, I'm sure she would be happy to do that. And I think we forget that people are really behind the institutions, or in front of the institutions, I guess, whichever way you want to look at that analogy. And so I love that advice, Sarah, in the context of, you know, build the relationship, right? We hear this thread so many times, and I'm hearing it come through this conversation loud and clearly as well, is build the relationships. Take the time to be thoughtful about what you need, which is fair enough. It's a service relationship, but also be genuine in the context of, you know, doing your part to genuinely show up to the relationship, being honest and being that true partner. I think that's excellent advice all the way around. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
That was so well articulated. I feel like I should have been interviewing you. You did a better job than I did in less than 30 seconds. That's great.
Just threading the needle. That's all. That's why it's easy for me. I just get to listen and then thread the needle. One last little question, or one last little thought I'd love to hear from you. If you could wave your crystal ball, you know, we've come through a pretty crazy period of time. We're recording this middle of February 2021. It's been a crazy almost full year now since we've been, you know, kind of in this stage, which is hard to believe. I was having the conversation with my daughter yesterday. It was like, 4 months seems so long. And I'm like, yeah, but we've literally been in this situation with COVID for a full year. Does it feel like, you know, and, you know, the context is all weird, right? All of that aside, you know, if you could, you know, wave your crystal ball with where we're at, where we've come from, what are some of the things that you're most excited about on the horizon in the banking sector, in technology and banking, in technology in particular across the country? I love that you are now going to have this more expanded view, of technology across Canada, and that's super exciting. But I'd love to hear, what you're so excited about.
Oh gosh, so many things.
I know.
I'll keep it short. So many things. Yeah, what I'm really excited about is continuing to see tech companies in Canada just expand and absolutely kill it on an international level. I feel like we're starting to do a better job of kind of shouting our story from the rooftops, and there's a lot of work to be done there, but there's more and more to celebrate at an accelerated pace. That's fundamentally where my passion is Canadian tech's amazing. Let's make sure everyone knows it. Some of the other stuff that I'm excited about too is in terms of like RBC, and I'll say banking first, and I'll say maybe RBC. In banking in general, I'm excited for some more competitors to come and play in this space. And that sounds counterintuitive, but I think competition and an understanding of the marketplace at the end of the day is just beneficial to companies who drive our economy.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a beautiful thing. And then from an RBC perspective, and I can't say too much about this now, but under the leadership of some of the folks that I'd previously mentioned, we've actually mobilized our entire tech team across the country. So we're one national team. So what's already cool that's starting to happen is that we're able to connect our clients to people, not just in our region, but across our country. And that's been impactful, but there's a ton of other stuff coming out to help companies scale. And I do need to pause there because there's going to be more info in the spring. And I can't wait to tell you all about it.
Well, that sounds to me like there's a follow-up episode in our future. That's for sure. We're so excited. I know we've had the privilege of, really not much more information than that, but knowing that there's something really cool kind of coming, and we can't wait to watch it unfold. We can't wait to hopefully be part of it. We can't wait to hopefully be helpful with it. But again, just super appreciate your time today, Sarah. Really, again, appreciate all that you've done to support technology across Canada, how you've engaged with us and how you've connected us with others in the ecosystem. So thank you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being part of this amazing ecosystem in Canada, and really looking forward to having you back again.
Thank you very much. This was a lot of fun, and hopefully I will see you guys in the spring. That's great.
Absolutely. Take care.